It is Friday edition, counting down. Orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason.
We were just talking before we came on, and I was told that I get a little bit excited on the show sometimes. And okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's better than the other way, Mace. You
yes,
know, we won't
it's
name
good.
any names, but you and I have both done shows where it's like yawn fest.
It's
Keep each
good
other on
to,
our toes.
yeah, it's good to have some excitement, whether the excitement is coming from the show or the excitement is coming from something else that crosses through the transom of your mind.
Mm,
Yes, it's always good to have various forms of excitement.
yes, it is. Various forms of how to beat the Houston Texans. So you and I were accused by Mike Evans and people on Twitter, the most important thing ever, of saying like you guys are talking like about the Texans like they're undefeated. We're very aware of their record, but Mace, this is going to be a tough win.
It will be. And I mean, look, there's a reason why this game was chosen to be moved to noon Central Time from 3:05 Central Time. Now, obviously, that's 11 a.m. Mountain for the kickoff. It was chosen because you have two teams that are starting to emerge. They're still kind of at embryonic stages of what they're hoping to become, right? But I mean, it was funny because Mike Evans brought up this morning, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when I was talking about CJ Stroud and the Texans, it was very much about where they're going to go long term. Talking about how with Stroud there, if he continues on this arc, you are talking about the Texans becoming a perennial contender, which is typical of teams that have those types of quarterbacks. The Chiefs are considered a perennial contender. Buffalo, even though they're 6-6 and muddling through some things, they've got great offensive metrics. Nonetheless, they're still what you'd call perennial contender. Cincinnati, they'll finish in a low spot this year because of Joe Burrow's injury, but Burrow will be back next year. They'll go back to contending. And CJ Stroud looks like he's becoming one of those quarterbacks who, when you have him, means you're going to be in the conversation year after year after year. But that being said, this is very much an unfinished symphony of a team. A lot of holes, a lot of things missing right now. And CJ Stroud sometimes is being the hero and compensating for them. But some of those issues are areas the Broncos can exploit.
And do not make any sort of mistake about it. This is rare what we see from a rookie quarterback. Yeah, we're going to sound like CJ Stroud cheerleaders, but he's doing it. Okay. He's not running something limited. Even Cam Newton in his record setting rookie season, Mace, he was still somewhat limited in what he did. 2 reads and ran, basically. Stroud is making these full field reads. He's got multiple weapons. He spreads the ball around. He doesn't lock onto his targets. And there's one weapon he doesn't even use, his legs. So this is a dangerous, dangerous matchup against that young man.
The weapon that we thought he was really going to use this year, right? Was his legs. That we thought, okay, it might take him a while to get the nuances of the Shanahan-McVay scheme down, especially because it's something completely dissimilar to what he ran at Ohio State. It was evident, I think, 3 games into the year, whoa, this dude is really ahead of schedule. He's grasping the concepts quicker than anybody thought possible, and his processor's so quick. And that's the thing that's what I think is going to separate him. He can process. You've mentioned over and over again, he sees the whole field. And let's face it, Russell Wilson's doing a lot of half field stuff. CJ Stroud's progressions are whole field. It's funny because we talked about that quote earlier this week from the unnamed defensive coach who said that Sean Payton is calling plays for Russell Wilson as though he's a rookie quarterback. The Texans are calling things for CJ Stroud as though he's been running this scheme for a long time. This is something really interesting that we're talking about a Broncos offense that has been rudimentary, although maybe this is a week where you take some of the restraints off and start seeing what it can do.
Yeah, part of it, and you brought up tempo. I think, honestly, Mace, you and I could do 3 hours on just tempo. You brought it up this morning. It's important for today. Tyler asked, are they going to open up the playbook? Yes, but be careful how much you open it up. Not only to give away film of whatever, but Mace, if you tempt the Texans into getting a shootout, you will get beat. If you stay with them, if you score, if it's a back and forth and you're scoring touchdowns and maybe a field goal here and there, that's the pace of play that you want. You can't lull them to sleep because they're just going to go down and score touchdowns. You can't run, and we punted. Okay. So be careful with the tempo, either too slow or too fast.
Yeah, and remember, because the Broncos' run defense is still not fixed. Cleveland had some gash runs on Sunday. Doing so, even though the Broncos didn't have to take the passing game seriously because Deshaun Watson is out for the year. So the issues on the ground, the wide lanes, the space that you're seeing in the box, that didn't go away against the Browns. And we saw it against the Bills. And we saw it against the Vikings. And we've seen it for most of this year. And if the Texans do try to get that going and have some success, well, then you bring the play action game into it, as some will say, kind of the third phase of the offense, because some coaches like to say it's passing, it's rushing, then it's play action. Yeah, playing, obviously faking off the run and throwing, and that's going to cause some problems. And we know that even though it hasn't been an extensively used tool in the Texans offense, in this scheme, the Shanahan-McVay scheme that Bobby Slowick is calling plays for, it's there, and they'll take some shots off the play action, and CJ Stroud is perfectly capable of running them. And again, that's where if you play an up-tempo game and instead of talking about the Texans having 8 possessions, it's 12 or 13, you then start worrying if they're getting the play action game going off the run, then does this start looking like that Tampa Bay game that Houston played a month ago, where literally the Bucs left the Texans 45 seconds at the end, and it was too much time.
Yep.
That's how quick strike this Houston offense can be. Is that the Bucs, they made a move that a lot of teams would make. They chose to call a timeout rather than taking a 10-second runoff on a penalty.
Right.
When that happened, I was watching that game, and I'm like, oh, boy, I wouldn't have done that.
Not against that guy. The Bucs are a good defense, Mace. Maybe a lot of people don't know that, but they have a good defensive unit.
Yeah, and, they're running old Tampa 2 concepts, which is going to mean they're going to keep things in front. They're going to keep things in front of them. But part of the Tampa 2 is it's designed to eliminate exactly what the Texans did, right? Which was getting those big chunks in a hurry and marching downfield. And that's exactly what they did. They had a quick strike against the Bucs, and that was it. But the way that game was going and the way the Texans were in fifth gear in that second half, I was like, oh, boy, I wouldn't have done that. The time wasn't a concern because you had about a minute left. The time wasn't a concern for the Buccaneers offense. I mean, you didn't want to run the risk of giving them a shot. And unfortunately for Tampa Bay, it did. And Houston scored. Houston scored with time to spare, even though they only had 45 seconds left. I mean, but that's the thing. This offense in Houston tends to be one that it's an avalanche type offense. Not talking about the hockey team here in Denver, but talking about how when that snowball gets rolling, it picks up speed, it picks up mass from all the snow, and it becomes something devastating as it's rolling down the mountain. When the Texans get momentum, that's what it looks like, and that's what you have to be on guard for.
Well, you bring up tempo, and I'll play off the snow theme and talk about snowflake. Flow. Every game flows differently. The Buccaneers were not aware of that flow, and they got in trouble for it. They got. So Sean Payton had better be aware of the flow of this game and understand how to stop or dam that flow.
Yeah. How do you keep things in control? And this is where this could be a game, Cease, where we're talking about, can the Broncos continue to have a good red zone defense, right?
Bend but don't break.
This might be a bend but don't break type of game where you're hoping to hold them to field goals, let them accumulate yards. Because here's the other thing. If they're accumulating yards, but they're not huge chunks, like if they're just, as the late Hank Stram would say, matriculating their way down the field, and they're taking their time a bit, you're forcing them to kind of take what's there, get the yardage in bits rather than huge chunks. Then you're letting them play the tempo game a bit, and then you're getting the game in a pace to where the Broncos want it, right? Possession wise, even though the Broncos lost the Raiders in week 1, possession wise, that was what, 7 possessions, 6 possessions for each team. That was what the Broncos wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
A low possession game. Now, you don't want them to march down the field that often, but you do want to limit their chances and limit your defensive exposure. If we're talking about this game being 8 possessions on each side, and the Texans are settling for field goals, it's bend but don't break, and you're looking up at the end of the day, and the Texans had 5 scoring drives, but it was 4 field goals and a touchdown, and they're sitting there with 19 points, the Broncos probably win this game.
Yep. Now, the Texans will be without Dalton Schultz. He has been declared out on the injury report. Noah Brown went from limited to DNP. He's their big play weapon, who before his injury had, I think, a 170-yard game and a 150-yard game. So he's the big play weapon. They still have a bunch of weapons. And even their backup tight end is a guy that can make plays. So, again, we believe in this Broncos defense, but the turnover thing, you're facing a guy that doesn't turn the ball over. So you can't rely on that. You can never rely on it, really, Mace.
Yeah, 5 interceptions, interception percentage of 1.3%. By the way,
3 of them in one game.
I saw a side-by-side comparison statistically, just baseline stats, right? Top-level stats, nothing deeply analytical.
No.
On CJ Stroud and Russell Wilson. And there was one, they both have robust touchdown interception rates, right? They both, CJ Stroud is a bit lower in completion percentage than Russell Wilson. Well, he's also pushing the ball down the field more. And another thing, CJ Stroud averaging over 100 more yards per game through the air than Russell Wilson is. It's not control what the Texans are doing. It's dynamic.
Yes.
So even though you look at their passer rating and say, oh, well, they're very similar. In fact, Russell Wilson has a higher passer rating than CJ Stroud. That doesn't tell the whole story.
He has a higher completion percentage. Yeah, because he's throwing 2-yard passes. Stroud has I think it's the largest air yards per attempt in the league. If not, it's among the league leaders, and Russell Wilson's the bottom. It's not against Russ. It's just the design of what they're asking Russ to do compared to what they're asking Stroud to do. Listen, we could get up here and be like, Broncos are going to roll every day. Yeah, Texans, I got no chance. Or we could tell you the truth. I would rather tell you the truth. I'm predicting a Broncos win. Mace, I believe you are as well. This one's going to be tough. And not only do we think highly of CJ Stroud, let's play the clips because Baron Browning, Alex Singleton, 2 of our favorites, both talked about CJ Stroud. We'll start with Alex Singleton and roll the beautiful bean footage.
A good, confident young player who, I think I was just saying it earlier, he's never really had any of those, rookie hiccups, so he doesn't really know how to have those. So, yeah, it's kind of, a game we're going to have to get after him and hopefully change that up.
Hopefully change it up. Baron Browning will be one of those guys to do that. Here's what BB had to say about CJS.
A very poised guy who it doesn't like his first year, and he's making plays all over the field for them. And I think he's going to be their franchise quarterback for a while.
What do both those statements have in common? Not like a rookie.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They both said the same thing. He's not like a rookie.
You got the feeling, even like on and off the record, the guys are impressed with the film of him. I think there's it's like, whoa, it's a little bit. The first time you watch him, it's kind of a revelation. I said revelation. God.
It's elevation here on a Friday.
Oh man, revelation. See, now aren't you glad I turned the game down? Because there, I got excited.
You got excited.
Excited.
Yeah.
Oh.
Usually I'm the one that messes up English, Mace.
Yeah, I I got a little excited. I have reasons to get excited sometimes.
Yeah, that's fine. And this Broncos offense can make you excited as well if they open things up a little bit more for Russ. Part of that is Jerry Jeudy. You saw Jerry Jeudy today in practice.
Mm-hmm.
You talked to Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, he looked good. He was moving well today.
Yeah.
Sean Payton thinks he's going to be good to go. Jerry Jeudy thinks he's going to be good to go. Actually, a brief Q&A regarding the groin injury. Let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
Maybe got the most work so far of the week today. How did it feel just going through practice?
I felt good.
You feel like you're ready to play?
Yeah.
How did you get that groin injury?
I tweaked it 2 days before the last game. I'm running routes.
But you'll be 100%, you think, Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay, Jerry, if there's ever a week you could use him, this is the week.
Yeah, well, it was interesting though what he also said. He tweak the injury, tweak the groin in practice, right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't listed on the injury report.
Yeah.
Okay. That might raise a couple of eyebrows at 345 Park Avenue.
And to pay proper respects to everything, Mace, sometimes players just don't tell people they're hurt. Sometimes players tell they're hurt all the time. Sometimes teams tell the players they're hurt when they're not.
It might be that he didn't tell the team, in which case that would be the plausible deniability. Well, he didn't mention it and all that. Yep. Right. So, but
well, and we saw him. I mean, it's not like Jeudy looked banged up. There was the one day, remember, I told you, but I had to leave early, and I said, watch Jeudy. I saw a little something. He was walking back to the huddle, and then he was out of one of the drills, and I said, just keep an eye on Jeudy. And then he ended up playing. So it's not, and that was a couple weeks ago, and that might have been just, a little cramp or something. I don't know. We don't know, but it's not like last Friday we're like, oh, look at Jeudy, look something, or Thursday. Like we didn't see that. So who knows? But man, they could use him this week. They could use somebody not named Courtland Sutton.
Well, you got him and you got Brandon Johnson potentially, right? Because Brandon Johnson's coming off of injured reserve, and there's a spot on the 53-player roster for him because Kareem Jackson's suspension spot that hasn't been filled. So very easy to just move Brandon Johnson up, have him play coming off of the hamstring injury. So at that point, you go Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Johnson, Marvin Mims Jr., Lil Jordan Humphrey. You've got your 5 guys, and they're not making burgers. And this is the Texans' pass defense that is probably the soft underbelly of the team so far this year. Houston's pass defense, by the way, allowing opponents a 92.5 rating. They've limited. Here's the thing: they've limited touchdowns, only allowing 11 touchdowns this year. But also, teams are completing 69% of their passes against the Houston Texans pass defense this year. So this could be a game where if Russell Wilson is on target on the short stuff, I think he can kind of goose that completion percentage. But there's going to be some room to roam for the Broncos receivers. And so this is why it's an interesting discussion. Do you want to use this as an opportunity for the Broncos to get their wings under them through the air? God, they're a terrible analogy. That sucks. So cheesy pie. Yeah, perhaps. But again, it's the tempo game. Like if you're quick striking through the air, are you then opening the door for the Texans to get some positive momentum going on the offensive side and get their feet under them and be able to consistently move the football? That's the conundrum the Broncos I think may face in this game is how to get the passing game going, but also maintain the deliberate tempo that they've played with 5 games and has gotten results.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind nothing more than a 300-yard game from Russell Wilson and still have that red zone proficiency. They're not rushing for a lot of touchdowns. Mason, I don't know if you saw that stat that I tweeted out, but it is quite interesting and very revealing. Actually, one of our stat heads at Football Guys revealed it. I'll just read it for everybody in case you're not on Twitter, because only 4% of our audience is on Twitter. The Broncos score a rushing touchdown once every 423.7 rushing yards, the worst in the league. The 49ers score a rushing touchdown once every 83 rushing yards, the best in the league. But interestingly enough, the Broncos score a passing touchdown once every 108 or 101.8 yards, best in the league. The Steelers, worst in the league, score a passing touchdown every 281 yards. So you see what they do when they get near pay dirt. Mace, they're
pass.
throwing it up to the big man.
Yeah, they're throwing to Courtland Sutton. That's why they're you look at like Russell Wilson's red zone passing numbers, they're off the charts, right? But then you look at the full field numbers and not so much. It's really interesting. Look, they didn't have a rushing touchdown after week 2 until last Sunday, and they got 2 of them. I mean, that was bonkers. They went 8 games without a rushing touchdown. They had 1 rushing touchdown through 10 games, which was tied for the fewest of any team through 10 games since 1937. Think about that. Nobody had fewer rushing touchdowns through 10 games in the last 86 years than the Denver Broncos. Other teams had just as few. 1, nobody had fewer. It was... there are some really wild stats that have developed for this team this year.
Historic stats.
Yes, 70 points allowed in one game. Turned out that was just the beginning of this. I mean, holy smokes.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
What a year this has been.
Yes.
What a rare mood I'm in.
What a day. What a day for
Yes.
Broncos country. And hey, y'all don't believe me about CJ Stroud. You don't believe Mace about CJ Stroud. Fine. Sit back and watch, and let's see this Broncos defense get after him. Make the rookie look like an actual rookie, because he doesn't play like a rookie.
Well,
We would
here's
love nothing more than to see that, but we're not going to deny what our eyes have seen. I get it. People aren't watching the Texans. You can watch this kid, watch him play special football.
But look, you see this defense has contained Patrick Mahomes. It was containing Josh Allen in Buffalo until PJ Locke got hurt and Delirian Turner-Yell had to come in at safety. So there have been successes here. That being said, you look at this defense against the Shanahan-McVay offenses, and with all respect to Josh Dobbs and Dorian Thompson-Robinson last week, you haven't seen it. I mean, go back to week 5, and Zach Wilson and the Jets offense running a lot of Shanahan-McVay concepts, albeit with old friend Nathaniel Hackett calling the plays. At times, they shredded the Broncos, especially on the ground. So let's see what happens here when you're seeing this scheme against the Broncos with an effective quarterback. Because you know what happened the last time you saw this scheme against Denver? It was 70 with an effective quarterback. It was 70 points. Now, that being said, no Baron Browning, no Justin Simmons. Jaquan McMillan wasn't in the lineup on a regular basis. Fabian Moreau wasn't in the lineup on a regular basis. That it was still Damari Mathis at corner. So you've had some personnel changes since then. But are those personnel changes enough to where you're talking about this defense going from one of the worst all time against that scheme to being locked down in this game? That's a big question.
Big question. Our guy Edward says in the chat room, I hope the Broncos use Mims like Houston uses Dell. Yeah, Tank Dell's still there. So let's hear from Mike McGlinchey. We got to play McGlinchey's piece because we're talking about the Bobby Slowick, the Shanahan offense. Here's what the big man, number 69 on the field, number 1 in your hearts, Mike McGlinchey had to say about Houston.
It does. It's very similar. They have obviously different players, couple different wrinkles here and there, but it is very similar and something that's obviously worked extremely well in the league over the last couple of years. The people that, obviously started with Saleh, then D'Amico, and obviously has carried on with the guys that have broke off of that staff. And they do a great job of getting their guys to play hard. They believe in what they do. They're very technically sound and very schematically sound. And they make life difficult on you because of how hard they play, how hard they penetrate up front. Their front sevens are always the staple of their defenses. And it's going to be a nice challenge for us again this week.
They're ready. They're ready for the challenge.
Yeah, but he was talking about the Texans' defense, not the Texans' offense.
Right.
So, I just wanted to make sure because we didn't. I was trying to get that in before we went to the quote to make sure everyone knew he was talking about Houston's defense. But personnel-wise, Houston doesn't have the guys to do what San Francisco did, and they're a long way off. I mean, for Houston right now, you look at like their pass rush, for example, and Will Anderson, who of course they made the big move to get in the draft, which is why which is why Arizona has Houston's pick. Which for a while we thought, oh, maybe Arizona's going to have picks 1 and 2 in the draft.
Right.
Didn't work out that way because Houston.
You're like Chicago with Carolina.
Yeah, didn't work out that way for the Cardinals. But Will Anderson, I mean, it's been fairly quiet this year, right? I mean, he's got 3 sacks, although he has 2 in the last 4 games. 5 quarterback hits in the last 4 games. So starting to pick it up a little bit, but certainly this is not what Houston was really hoping to see in terms of the initial impact compared to some of the early impacts that we've seen from pass rushers picked early in the draft. That's been a disappointment. And look, against the Broncos offensive line that has played really well in the last few games, that's built its confidence as they built things up on the ground and has improved in pass protection as they built things up on the ground. I don't see much cause for concern in terms of pass rush and making sure Russell Wilson has a clean pocket. I think the Broncos are going to be able to do that.
Mace, we got a silly clip. We also have the Sean Payton clip if you want. Before we're out of here, which you want one, you want both, you want neither, you want to wrap it up, get your weekend going. You got a trip to Houston, baby.
Let's start with Sean Payton because here's the thing. I mean, I think you've probably seen the percentages regarding the difference in the playoff chances for the Broncos if they win this game or if they lose this game, talking about as much as a 40 percentage point swing in terms of their playoff odds. Well, Sean Payton isn't that caught up with this game being the be-all, end-all that the statistics and the analytics say it is. Here's what he had to say today.
Yeah, but it's one game. Meaning we have 6 of them here. When we add up the units at the end, look, both teams are 6-5. Both teams are in the AFC, but you got to prepare to play a game. You got to prepare to play your best game, and the further we play and the longer we get into the end of the season, each week will present scenarios. But it's a good team. It's a team that has played well this year, and they're playing with confidence.
Well, he was excited. That's pretty loud. Plugged in
Yeah,
that Malt box, baby.
well, we were plugged in the Mole box. Yeah. Hey, it sounded all right when I recorded it. It sounded all right. I don't know if it just we got in the hopper here on the show and it didn't sound quite as good. So, yeah, I don't know.
What about the goofy clip that we get to see this every Friday?
Okay.
I don't know how many fans have seen this, but we see it every Friday, and it's fun, Mace. It's fun.
It is. So on Fridays, after the scratch and stretch period, as I call it, of practice, calisthenics,
Scratch and stretch.
Yeah. Some guys
sounds like my morning routine.
Yeah, exactly. We all know what that feels like, right? So what they do is on other days. Okay.
I needed this, Mace. I needed this.
I'm here for you. So on other days, what they do is they have the scratch and stretch. Yeah, I'm just going to lean in and say it. What the heck? And then they move on to do some all 11 work, offensive, defensive alignments, etc. What they do on Friday is a little bit different. After the calisthenics, they go and they do what they call pat and go. It's basically quarterback pats it twice, receiver goes, right? And they just throw passes. Now, usually you just have receivers, tight ends, running backs catching passes. The Broncos let everybody on offense do this, including the offensive linemen, this is always fun to watch because these big guys get to show off a little of the athleticism that they possess that isn't always evident in terms of what they do up front. And hey, let's watch these big guys catch some passes. Let's go through the entire offensive line, including practice squad. Roll that beautiful beam footage. That 11 for 11. Nice catch there. Number 60, Luke Wattenberg, I thought had the catch of the day. You know, we've seen guys on Fridays make some one-handed grabs.
Right. Miners had a good one though. Bolles let it get into his body, but Miners like turned around and caught it arms extended. That's some good scouting right there.
That's some good technique. I mean, it makes you start wondering if they should do some tackle eligible type of stuff. You know, get in the goal line, have one of those dudes line up outside and let them run a route. Or maybe take one of those backups and have him be a fullback. Remember what they would do with Mitch Unrein, defensive lineman from the University of Wyoming 11 years ago? Like, if you go down like the list of all the people to whom Peyton Manning threw touchdown passes, right there is number 96, Mitch Unrein.
Eating Colorado's finest.
That's right. That's right.
He knows where Grover's at. I always love talking to Mitch because he knew where Grover was at, where I grew up. So it's always good.
You know, I feel bad for him and a few other players that were on the roster through 2014, but then in 2015, the Broncos went to the Super Bowl, won it all, finally broke through, and he wasn't there, you know.
Yeah, it's like Orlando, you know. It's
that's tough, man.
Really tough, man.
All these guys you played with, they got the big rings. If I thought about this before I went on the show, I would have busted out my big ring. I mean, think about that. I mean, these, you know, they're all, you know, all these guys that played in the NFL and don't have rings, and silly old, you know, chucklehead me has a freaking Super Bowl ring, right? I mean,
Dan Marino doesn't have a Super Bowl ring, but Andrew Mason does.
God. But he's in the Hall of Fame and I'm not. You know,
you're in my Hall of Fame.
Oh, so thank you. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Steve Atwater, friend of all of ours here around these parts. Steve sometimes tells me that he wears his Hall of Fame ring because there are fewer of those than Super Bowl rings out there, and he's right. I mean, with a Super Bowl ring, every year, because teams tend to give it to everybody in the organization, every year there are, you know, 300-400 Super Bowl rings made, right? How many Hall of Fame rings are there in total? Not even 400. So you go 400 a year versus not even 400 in the totality of time. I get what Steve is saying. That's a more exclusive club, respectfully speaking, than being part of a Super Bowl winner. Although it's still pretty dadgum rare. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Both are great accomplishments.
All I did was write some stories, do some videos. I mean, it's like, I did what I'm doing right now, basically, right? Although not the daily show like this. This is kind of fun.
This is kind of fun. We appreciate you. So do those YouTube things. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. And if you've commented in the chat room, this side, whatever side it is, then comment down below. It helps the YouTube algorithm. It puts us in front of more people, more Broncos fans. We're here to talk about the Broncos. Love what this team is doing and appreciate you very much. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying, thanks, everybody. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty?